all of our email newsletters.
Can everyone hear that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. This is so exciting. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to broadcast.
Oh, was Kate the one? She was supposed to be the
What?
What?
Like, you guys can talk. This is just for, like, we are officially live. We've got some attendees popping in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining in from.
The party with the jam.
No, this is like my first time trying it, so I'm really excited about it. I feel like there's normally like kind of a lull, so I'm like, oh, we'll just get like some jams in there.
This is as close to a dance floor as I've gotten in a minute. So I'm here.
Hi, Kathy. How's it going? Thanks for being here. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining from Utah. Michael, I didn't know you were joining from Thornton.
I am up in Thornton. Yep. Northern suburbs.
Well, folks who are just joining in, we're going to give our attendees a couple minutes to get into the event, and then we'll kick everything off.
I have a feeling this chat section is about to pop off, and I'm here for it.
Hey, Jim. Look at that. Creative Mornings people in the house.
Love it.
I drove to Evergreen today and just had lunch up in Evergreen, and it was unreal. It was magical up there.
I bet. It's a Christmas wonderland almost.
Got some help, some beer.
Build a snowman, Dave.
A snowball fight.
Welcome to Denver.
Hey, Nicole. Thanks for being here. Dave, I'm loving this enthusiasm. This is great.
I see some names. I'm like, that's.
Oh my gosh, Dave, I forgot it was your birthday. Happy birthday.
Yes, it's my birthday.
I'm sorry. We're just going to casually let that slide. Like, I feel like.
I like Jim's comment. That's awesome.
Good. Thank you, Jen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, two very kind people got me a really nice bottle of scotch that happens to be the color of, I should actually get it.
Yeah, let's do it.
The brand colors of Creative Mornings Denver is purple, and there's Macallan, like special edition.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
This special edition based on the color, the some Pantone color close to purple. So what a nice time.
That is
this was delivered.
Different kind of Friday morning drink.
Dave, if I was better at figuring out how to like switch off my screen right now, I would play like happy birthday music. But I'm like, this is a huge step up for me. So
Don't touch anything.
we are figuring this out right now. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, so bear with me.
Killing it.
Okay, well, I'm pausing the music, and I think that we can kick off the event. Well, everyone, thank you for being here tonight. For those who are here, already flying ahead. For those who, whoa. getting too far ahead of myself. For those of you who could join, the event that you're on is called The Power of Community. We have some great people here tonight to kind of talk about their scope of community. Before we get into it, I want to go over some meeting norms. So you'll notice that we are in a Zoom webinar. So what that basically means is that you cannot see yourselves. You can see the panelists. You can see our screen. And so what we ask is that you use the chat functionality for sharing general comments. You use the Q&A for questions that you'd like to ask our panelists tonight. We will be doing an audience Q&A at the end of the event. This event is being recorded and transcribed, so we will make sure that we send that over to you after the event. Any resources that are mentioned during this, we will shoot over in a follow-up email. And if you'd like to get involved in GA, you can check out our website by going to ga.co. And for those of you who don't know what General Assembly is, we are a global education company. I feel like I should introduce myself. My name is Hannah. I'm the local marketing producer for General Assembly. So I put on all of our events, classes, and workshops. So what GA focuses on is helping people find the work that they love through education. So we host, we have immersive boot camps in software engineering, user experience design, data science. Then we also have part-time courses in digital marketing, product management. And then we also have some short form classes, one of which Kayte teaches, which is Instagram Masterclass. And then we also have a lot of different ones where you can upskill on the evenings and weekends. But one of my favorite things that I do is host these events where we bring in industry experts, or in this case, community experts, to talk a little bit about how they're driving community at this time. So super excited about this. Before we kick off, I want to kind of kick this over to our community right now. So either do this on your phone or do this on a separate tab, pull up slido.com, or you can go right on your phone and use the QR code. So what we're going to start with is, what communities are you all currently involved in? So feel free to try and do this. Let me know if it's not working. The pledgettes, music groups, creative mornings. Dave, was that you? Yellow Co, Denver Dev Slack, Denver UX, PMI, Denver Marketing Mavens, lovely. Very cool. We've got a lot of different people representing in the house today. Super excited to have you. Downtown Denver Partnership, love it. Cool. So we're going to ask one more question. So what do you define community as in less than 5 words? Love it. People supporting people.
Lucy. My dog is very passionate about community. Excuse me.
Synergy, that's a good one. Everyone is welcome. Awesome. These are great. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We're creating community right now. Look at this.
We really are.
People who share interests, caring about each other. Yeah, these are all right and wonderful answers. So thank you everyone for doing that. I think this is like a really cool way for us to kind of kick off this conversation and think about some of these. I'm actually going to take a screenshot. So, oh, whoa, that was not good. So I can share these later and think about it.
I love that.
Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to kick things over to Kate, and you can start this lovely panel.
Yay, thank you. My name is Kayte Demont. I am a big fan of General Assembly. I've been working with and collaborating with GA since I lived in Boston several years ago, all the way to LA and now in Denver. As Hannah mentioned, I teach Instagram masterclass. I'm also an artist and freelance creative photographer, whatever you want. I love to do it. And I work in sales and marketing at Outfront Magazine, which is Colorado's LGBTQ publication. So I too am kind of all over the place in terms of the communities that I'm a part of. I love that last question that we just chatted about, because our definition of Outfront and community is where you belong. So seeing a lot of those answers was super cool and feels really in line with what we're going to be talking about. But I'm so excited to be here today, navigating this conversation with you all. I'm going to open it up to the panelists right now to introduce themselves and let you know a little bit more about themselves, and then we'll get into it. So let's start with Kelly.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Stevens. I serve as the Chief Impact Officer at the Colorado Technology Association, which is a statewide nonprofit supporting our tech community here in Colorado. I see some CTA folks on, so thanks for joining us. I also am the founder of KIN, which is a community for professional badass women that focuses on personal development and meaningful connections. Community is something I could go on forever about. I feel like I've been lucky enough to work at some other great community organizations and be involved in some other boards. Right now, I also serve on the Downtown Denver Partnerships Women's Council that supports women entrepreneurs, and the Colorado Smart City Alliance Board, which is a nonprofit that brings together the public sector and the private sector on smart cities initiatives. But once you get me going, I won't stop, so I'll stop there, but looking forward to diving in a little bit more.
Thank you so much. Whoever wants to jump in, start introducing yourselves. Dave, go ahead.
You got it. Better to assign someone, I suppose.
I know. I realized I was like, we're on Zoom.
That's okay. My name's Dave Momper, and in my professional major focus, I suppose, I'm building community through leadership development and often working with a lot of different types of teams, whether it's sales teams or creative teams or executive teams, on the human connection and communication skills. So that's kind of my major forte. And then the extracurricular community-based work I do, I happen to have the honor of running the Creative Mornings chapter with a team of 8 or 9 other people in the Denver chapter, which is one of 215 chapters around the world. And we're a nonprofit that puts on normally in-person events once monthly in the morning, speaker events on creativity, and then often a happy hour series as well. And of course, we've shifted our work and our community to the virtual space, as have I done with my professional space as well. And I would just say community has been literally the foundation of my entire career, because of I was always in sales and marketing roles. So to know people, to have relationship with people, I met Kelly Stevens through basically a network she was building that I was helping to be a part of. And I don't know, it's powered my career. And I recognize there might be some careers where community isn't as essential, but I can't see a single place in the world where community doesn't help us grow and thrive and serve. So that's why I'm here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Nick Greenhalgh with Colorado Inno. We're a digital media company focused on startups and innovation across the state. We're still pretty young ourselves. We launched a couple years ago here in Denver, actually at GA for our kickoff event. So shout out GA for that. For us, community is our readers. We connect with our readers through our stories, which go up daily. And we've got a daily newsletter as well called The Beat, which I'll dive into as we get more into the panel here. But that's sort of our touch point with our community. You know, we're in people's inboxes 5 days a week talking about tech, startups, occasionally local news, sometimes some wildlife stories and elk and things like that. So that's our community, and I'm happy to dive into that more as we get going here.
Awesome, thank you. And Michael, go ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm Michael Dusing. I think The main community thing that I'm involved with right now is the Develop Happy Hour. So I've been hosting a monthly happy hour for tech professionals that started it actually started on Google Plus back in those days, and moved over to Meetup. But it started out of the Develop Denver conference, which I also help organize every year. Our Meetup has transitioned to Zooms as well with all of the fun that's happening. But usually we bounce around different venues each month and check out the Denver community, both the tech community gathering together and new hotspots and cool places to check out. And also have met a lot of these folks around as a part of like Creative Mornings. I used to be primarily a freelancer for the last 8 years. So community has been a huge aspect of my business and daily life. Now I work for a company that does enterprise cloud software. But we are all striving to make things work and get our social buzz off of Zoom calls and weird happy hours and online games.
That isn't the most relatable thing I've ever heard, honestly. Like, what is social connection? It's so different these days, which actually brings us perfectly into how I wanted to start the panel. Obviously, with COVID and just everything that's happening in the world right now, I think a lot of us are being faced with challenges that we've never had to face before, or we're doing a lot of these things and juggling things all at the same time. And we've never had to do that. So I would love to just start by all of us sharing what's been different with 2020. What have you tried to do already that either has or hasn't worked? I'd love to talk about both sides of the coin to kind of bring the community together. And yeah, let's start surface level and then we can really start diving in. So whoever wants to go ahead and take that first, if you feel so inspired, go ahead and we'll go from there.
I mean, from my standpoint, the monthly meetup we do is a happy hour. We normally get together, people mingle, talk about whatever they want. We found that like a Zoom general call with a lot of people got hard to have everybody meet, especially people that are more introverted and are looking for jobs or things like that. Our meetup is often a place where recruiters or companies come to meet new talent, and people come to get hired. So one of the things we've done is really utilize Zoom breakout rooms. And we've kind of found the sweet spot of 3 to 4 people in a room is a good amount of people that everyone can get to talk and know each other a little bit more, and then decide if they want to like talk more offline or exchange emails or things like that. Our meetup is normally from 6 to 9 p.m. and we do 15-minute breakout rooms and then bring everybody back to the lobby, kind of regroup, and then do another 15-minute breakout room and just kind of do that throughout the time period. It seems to be a good amount of time that people all get to meet each other in the group. We've had anywhere from 30 to 60 people show up in those.
I'll jump in.
We've been adapting.
That's awesome, Michael. Same with us at the Colorado Technology Association. We're in the business of gathering people. It's really where a lot of our members, find value, is showing up and learning and meeting and getting that pipeline for business. And so we had to very quickly figure out how to continue doing that. And I'm so proud of our team for not really skipping a beat. We didn't spend a lot of time waiting around to get it perfect. I think that's been a big lesson of right now, right? Is just do it. And, if you have the vision, it'll work out. So that was one of the things I feel like instead of peeling back or slowing down, we actually started to do probably 3 times more events. And there's been some benefits to that. I think just the idea of accessibility and creating, a community that's even broader because maybe they're outside Denver or outside the state is a really cool benefit. There's a different kind of attention that I think you get from people virtually. I know that it feels like we can be zoomed out and kind of over it sometimes, but at the same time, I think there's a little bit more focus and less distraction. People are being a little bit more thoughtful about when they want to show up, and when they do, there's some really great engagement. I'm sure you're seeing that, Michael, in breakouts and such. So I can get in a little bit more to the tools, but I think overall we've found some benefits in the virtual that I think will live on long past, this time. So
I want to know what those are, Kel.
the benefits?
Yeah, what are like one or two that stand out for you?
Yeah, I think, so for example, in March, we were getting ready to do our largest event of the year. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. It's our biggest opportunity to bring our community together. It's 1,000 people. And the event is not focused on speakers. It's really focused on networking and connections. And so we ended up postponing it to July 30th, but we still proceeded virtually and found a really great tool called Grip that we used out of the UK that allowed for these one-on-one meetings. So I could say, hey, Dave, do you want to meet? I see you're going to the event. Do you want to meet at 5 o'clock? And if you accepted that meeting request at 5 o'clock, a window just popped up in the tool and you could meet. So we knew that over the 3 hours of our event that 1,500 meetings took place.
Wow.
So cool to be able to like track the data and see that people showed up, and people found that it was really nice rather than walking into like a big room and wondering who the heck is here, being able to kind of do some research and reach out beforehand and then decide who you want to meet with and make the most of your time. So I think there's some real efficiency. And then we did do some peer-to-peer rooms and some other opportunities, speed networking, to ensure that the casual connections were there too, because we don't want to miss out on that. But I think there's a way to deliver some return on investment of time when you do it.
That's such a good point too. And I love what you said about the casual connections, because I actually feel like most networking events, especially if you're a more introverted personality, like we were just talking about, are those casual connections. So this actually might break down a barrier for some people who wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable to just really step outside of their shell. So that's amazing. And I hope that that continues beyond this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we found that accessibility wise, a lot of people that would normally like are in Colorado Springs or even other states are attending our meetup that normally wouldn't be able to make it. So that's huge. The hard part about that is exactly what you're saying with the casual connections, trying to engineer that serendipity of just talking to someone and having a side conversation. Maybe you're talking about bikes or something, and then somebody else hears it and joins in. Like that's really hard to replicate on scale online, especially when you're trying not to talk over people or get too many people talking at the same time. So it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
With Creative Mornings, we immediately shifted gears, and it was pretty easy to do that in a sense. Being in that creative space, I suppose it's really easy to say this in hindsight, by the way. We probably had a few moments of like, WTF, how's this going to go? But instead of, we have to do it differently, we have like a new creative canvas to work from and a new set of constraints. And to approach it that way, it's not just our chapter. I think around the world, a lot of different chapters have now realized, well, there's a couple different ways we can do this. And it's prompted that shift in mindset that maybe, there's these things these takeaways, these benefits that wouldn't have been, revealed before without the pain of the times. And then we have had people from all over the world joining our events, which is so neat to see. The trade-off might be though, that when your event is accessible from anywhere in the world, that means that from anywhere in the world, there's thousands of events and programming that someone is now picking from with their limited time outside of already being on Zoom. So then I wonder about how do we truly add value to our community in a way that has them continuously coming back when there's almost even more options and therefore more pressure to choose how to spend your time wisely. I'd love to hear from you all on like, how do you still keep everyone's attention authentically?
I think for us, for out front, like we started a Facebook group at the beginning of it. It was something that I think for the publication, they had been primarily focusing on print. So to be able to expand the digital presence, but also come alive with this vibrant community that already exists, but now we're online, was really beautiful. But I agree with you. I think it's really hard. And I actually teach that on like a basic marketing level in my Instagram masterclass too, is how do you create content that's going to stop and disrupt the feed and break through the noise? And that absolutely applies here as well. You know, what are these events? There's so many virtual events. I think they're all executed at different levels. They all give different things, but I also feel like there was a lot of fatigue. There was a dip kind of halfway through. I started and I was like, oh, the webinars, I'm going to be so smart by the end of quarantine. And then I was like, I've been to 25 things in 2 days. Like, and it's just not sustainable. So for me, I always like to go the route a little bit more of, the emotional aspect, transparency. I like to say transparency more than authenticity, just because I feel like that buzzword is very played out. But I also think that the word transparency brings a little bit more grittiness and realness. Like, we're all literally surviving through the same thing at the same time. So I think that actually strengthens the sense of collective community to begin with. So then from there, like, how do we want to drill down and strengthen is kind of how I've been looking at it. And just sort of developing what's already kind of organically happened. I don't know if anybody else has anything to kind of build off of that, or Nick, if you wanted to kind of loop in your answer to that with your answer to the other question too, totally up to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, to Dave's point about like, how do you make noise? How do you separate yourself? That's something that we've been thinking about pretty consistently since this has gone on across our network. And I think the answer we landed on is for us to energize our community. Now is the perfect time to take a swing at getting, you know, that rock star that we couldn't get for an in-person event. Like, that person that lives an hour away that may not have come down to Denver for, you know, an hour panel talk. Now it's the time to reach out and say like, hey, do you have 45 minutes in your kitchen where you can jump on a Zoom and chat with us about X, Y, and Z? And the other thing for us too, is it's sort of like changed our thinking. We were quarterly events, panel discussion with some mingling. Now we're thinking, you know, if we find someone awesome that can talk for 20 minutes, you know, we'll just put a quick chat together, you know, at 2 p.m. while people are grabbing lunch, or, you know, 4 p.m. if people want to bring a drink, and we'll just talk for 25 minutes, open 5 or 10 minutes of questions up, and get in and get out. For us, it's just changed the way we've thought about engaging our community and providing value to them in different ways that we hadn't before.
Yeah. I'd say that, like, from a marketing perspective, it's not only about like saying like, and I agree, Nick, I was going to say the same thing as a benefit is the ability to get speakers and things that, you know, normally you might not have been able to get. But also it's a journey. And I feel like it's both a challenge and an opportunity, I think, to take people on that journey of your vision of how this is all going to transpire over a technology platform, especially if they have expectations of like what your community, how your community gathered in person. You're sitting here like, there's going to be this tool and you're going to be able to do this and that and peer-to-peer. And I feel like there's this whole education component that actually makes the event start weeks before the actual day. If you're wanting to provide networking and things like that, and the ability to see who's going to be there, you know, all of a sudden our timelines to plan these things have changed because we want to open up maybe the attendee list and, you know, some components days or even weeks early to get them in it and understand. Because a lot of times with some of these that are a little more intricate, it's hard to just show up and then make the most of your time. So it's nice that I think there's that like longer term engagement, but from a community planning standpoint, it's also a little bit burdensome to like take people along on this journey with you. Like, you've got it all figured out, but now you have to like get everyone else to figure it out too and show up and have a good time. So it's been kind of interesting to see that shift in our organization.
I'm sure.
To one thing you said, don't wait till it's perfect. Like, in a sense, there's a degree of empathy out there collectively in the world. Like, we're all just trying to sort through this, and you just got to do it. So I mean, I just want to give you a nod to that, because this is uncharted territory for everybody in a sense. So,
well, and sorry, go ahead.
There's this little axiom that I kind of went to when we were trying to recreate creative mornings, or figure out to what degree. And we understood that our purpose hadn't necessarily changed, right? The purpose of the organization was still the same purpose, the desired outcome, which was, I think we would say it as, we want to inspire and provide wisdom to our community. That didn't necessarily change. You could maybe articulate it a little differently for the times, but really it was that method. So purpose, method, outcome. And then it was the method. The madness is almost, that's the creative part too, but it's a shakeup. But if that's valuable for people, just reconnect to your purpose, define your outcome, and then reinvent the method. That's been a helpful thing.
Yeah, to build on that, I'll really say it's kind of what we came back to with our meetup too, is that there were certain expectations about just like coming to a place and being around people that understand your problems and have the same sort of problems and know what you're dealing with day to day. We're all locked in our rooms with Zoom on all day and trying to get work done in between Zoom meetings, and still have some sense of community. So it's just that collective good and bringing people together that still persists, and that doesn't change. We found over the years that a big part of it is just showing up, just being there every month, and people realizing that it's still happening. You can still show up and see people, meet new people, see people that you don't normally see. Because in the tech industry, a lot of the people that come to our meetup really only see each other at the meetup. They, work down south in Denver, or other people work up in Boulder, and the only time they see these people is monthly at a meetup. But they've developed a friendship and a relationship over 15 minutes of conversation once a month. So it's nice to see those things happening, especially mentorship and people realizing like, hey, oh, you worked at that place, I worked there like 3 years before you. Let's talk about our experiences there and how our careers have grown and things like that. It leads to a lot of, like you were saying, casual connections and serendipity. So trying to leave space for that, I think, is the hard part. Exactly what you're saying, Kelly, about like opening up the attendee list and allowing people to connect with each other before the event even happens. Those are a lot of the challenges, but we're all working through it together, and people are pretty forgiving of the methods.
I love everything that you've all said, and I'm curious to take it in a little bit of a different direction. I think we've been talking about a lot of like official tools like Zoom or maybe virtual conferences and things like that. But I'm also hearing that we're all saying we really need the flip side of that coin too, which is the one-off interactions and the kind of casual joking conversations at the water cooler, whatever the case may be. Something that I discovered, and I always joke with people about this, is TikTok, which is another social media platform. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but it's just been crazy to see the sense of community that the younger generations have really been fostering. And then to also see like the millennial generation and even older generations get on there too, from a personal and a business standpoint. And the one thing that I've really loved about it is just kind of how people are, there's a joke that people are really comfortable and almost too comfortable with what they're sharing on the app. But I actually think that's a really beautiful thing, because I think it's an equalizer and it kind of levels the playing field. To reach out to people that you might not have otherwise, or might not have connected to otherwise, like we were saying, even about bringing people in that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to have speak or something like that. And another thing that's been working for Outfront is Instagram Lives. It's been a little bit more casual, a little bit less planned and more organic. And for us, it's been everything from interviewing the founders of the brand partners that are our sponsors and our advertisers, and getting to know them on a more personal level and using that as an advertising tool for them. But also to personify our brand and let these people know that we're real people behind this brand. And it's not necessarily like a networking thing, but it's more just sort of building that personal community around yourself, which obviously also bleeds into your professional life. So I'm just curious what your experiences have been on kind of a little bit smaller scale with community. Like, how have you been fulfilling all of those needs beyond just these work meetups and conferences and Zoom professional meetings?
Yeah, for us, we have this community in our newsletter, right? But that's online only. We don't connect with them. They don't connect with each other necessarily because they don't, they obviously don't know who's on the other end. But that was what sort of we used our events, our in-person events for. It was like, you all are part of this community, whether you realize that the other person next to you is or not. Now you're in a room, now you're part of it. So we've been like searching for a way to replicate that on a large scale, and then on a smaller scale too, like these connections that are made there, like, people will come to our events looking for jobs. People will come to our events looking to connect with panelists that they know are going to be there. And honestly, it's still been challenging for us to find a way to replicate that in this virtual setting. But at least for me, one of the things that's remained important is taking a virtual coffee that I would have taken during normal times, like still connecting with people, whether it's a story or not for me, or, something official or not, someone just looking to learn, what we're up to, finding time in my schedule to still have those conversations that aren't necessarily going to lead to something you see in the newsletter or something you see on our site. And then also continuing to try and facilitate those if someone reaches out and said, hey, you wrote about this person or you covered this person, can I have a contact to them or something like that? It's something we're more than happy to do. And even more so now where we can't facilitate those connections in person.
Do you get a lot of hits on LinkedIn? I've been getting a lot of people sliding into the DMs on LinkedIn, which I love. Like, I love connecting and meeting new people, but more so than ever. And I'm wondering if there's a trend, kind of to your point, where you're taking more of these virtual meetings. Sure, it's easier for you to do that too, because you don't travel between places. You could do back-to-back coffee meetings in an hour, whereas you might have been able to only fit in one in person. Do you think that will continue? Can you hear me? It's saying that my internet connection is unstable, but I feel like we're good.
No, you're good. You're good. I heard you.
Okay. Well, do you think that we'll be able to kind of continue at that pace, or as things start to change and continue to open up and shift like the amoeba that our lives are right now? What do you all think those are going to kind of translate into? Because I love what you said, and I hope that a lot of those parts continue. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm hopeful they do continue, because it just opens my network up so much further than it had been previously. We're able to connect with more people now that we're virtual than we were when we were in person, which, is great and not great, because, we'd obviously prefer that in-person connection. But I'm hopeful that people continue reaching out. We love feedback. We love, support and critique. So I'm hopeful that it continues going forward, and then that it eventually leads to more in-person connection once that's possible.
Curious if we can explore, what does an in-person event truly give us that we're not getting, which you could say human touch, for one. Like, you literally can't touch a human virtually, but you could when you were at an event. Like, what was it about human touch, or at least proximity to another human? What is afforded through that we might be neglecting or missing out on or yearning for? And then can we replicate it in these virtual worlds? It's probably something like trust or something like that, It's like a sense of relatability and trust, maybe. But it is a funny thing to say, like, well, because there's some clear advantages. Like, you can measure all these interactions, like Kelly said, and, accessibility, reach, even a different set of programming, because it could be a little bit more, bite size maybe. But we're giving up touch. What a funny thing to point out, but what is that really, what's that revealing or omitting for us?
Dave, I feel like you're somebody who gets down with an energetic connection and have a good read on people's energy. And I am definitely an energy reader too. And for me, I feel like it's almost like if you lose a sense, your other senses are heightened. And I've really kind of had to like put myself out there and be a little bit more vulnerable personally and professionally to make up for that lack of proximity to somebody's energy in person, because there really is nothing like that. However, I feel like how many ever months we're into this now, I'm getting a little bit better at it. Like, I'm curious, have you experienced anything? Do I sound crazy? I don't know.
Well, yeah, it might be that energy vibe, that exchange of information and energy that, is intangible, but probably, you know, really does exist between us as we're interacting.
Yeah.
There's one thing that comes to mind that I've done that's kind of been fun. There's a platform called Lunch Club, and it allows you to get matched up with potentially, I think, anywhere in the world, but based on shared interests or community or whatever it may be, create a little profile, and then you can sign up for virtual kind of blind dates, but they're just conversations of whatever degree you want them to be. And that's just you roll the dice and show up and learn about someone else. You know, that could be that casual coffee, or you can get really, I think the tool lets you get a little bit more intentional with how you're meeting people, but things like that exist out there. But it just will never be the same to like shake anyone's hand on this call and just actually look at you in the eye, which is another thing. None of us can actually look each other in the eye.
That's so true.
In these settings.
It looks like we can't. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
One of the things too, to like take that a step further, I think, is that we miss out on some of like the small talk. Like even when you think about your community as just your workplace or your team. And so I like to believe that a good icebreaker can go a long way. I mean, take me back to like my camp days or something, but how do you help people ask like the most random question? Like we could ask the most random question, like what's your favorite number or your lucky number? And then the answers that come from that and the things you learn about people, it's crazy. Or starting a team meeting with your nag and your brag, like what's been weighing you down or what's bothering you today? You're bummed about the weather or you love it. And what's super exciting? What do you want to celebrate with everybody? And so I think that there's some of that human touch is just translating like each of our own stories. And, you know, and a lot of those walls have been broken down because we're seeing people in each other's homes and we might see their kiddo crawling across their lap. And, you know, I love that. But I also would just say that like, let's all be a little bit more intentional about asking, you know, that question that allows us to get to know each other before we need to get down to business or the topic at hand.
I'm so glad that you said that, because that's kind of exactly what I was trying to allude to and didn't do as good a job as you just so eloquently put it. So thank you. But I feel like it's that sense of empathy when you're really taking the time to ask somebody how they're really doing. It's like, oh, well, fine is your answer, but like, I actually want to know because I feel this energy that you're also feeling in the world. And I know for the Outsiders, which is our Facebook group for Out Front, every so often I'll just put in a mental health check and be like, hey, how's everyone doing? And it's really crazy to kind of see the barriers that are broken down that way when people feel comfortable because maybe somebody else shared first. And it's almost a little bit easier to be more vulnerable with people when somebody else is showing you that that's okay because they're putting themselves out there as well. And although I feel like cancel culture is very rampant right now, which we can get into if we want to, I feel like a meaningful educational conversation is always better. We love teaching moments, but it's really important to kind of use hiding behind the computer as also breaking down a wall. I feel like we've all been hiding behind these screens because we've been able to meet in person, and now we just have the screens in a lot of ways. So how do we really show our true selves? So I think it's spot on, and that empathy is maybe a way that we can harness that energy that we're missing, and continuing to blur the lines of what's acceptable to ask in a business meeting. Like, I genuinely want to know how my business prospects are doing because they're real people, you know, they have families and lives, and work is only a very small part of who they are. And I don't know, I just think that's such a massive part of building community, is really taking the time to connect authentically with people.
I'm curious if the people as attendees can chat in, like what's the biggest thing you miss that you're yearning for in-person live events that, you know, you're looking forward to hopefully having some version of that when we get back to a new way of things. If you could just chat that in, I would love to know that. What's missing that you wish you had?
I love that too.
Yeah. And a big thing for our meetup, we've turned to like virtual high fives as opposed to the in-person high five or
That's so cool.
So
you're literally going like
fives,
this, like show me. How does this work?
It's weird. You gotta you gotta time it right, look and everything.
That's amazing.
In person, you look for the elbow swing, but it doesn't work as well.
That's such a good point. And there's a delay too, so you have to really know your connection.
Yep.
Challenging high five competition.
The informal chatter is what it looks like. Hugging. I'm such a physical touch person as well. Hugging and high fives. An event marketer, so any live event would be nice. Agreed. Honestly, for me, it's music and that energy that's created during any type of performance, really. That's something that I feel like is really cool.
Also interesting how valuable place is, like the setting we are in when we have community has a huge impact. And we would migrate our different events month to month to cool venues in Denver as part of our, our craft for St. Michael as an attendee. We want you to be like, oh, wow, I didn't know this building existed, or this new wing existed of the art museum or something.
Exactly. That's a big draw that we had too. Like even like as you're saying, the vibe is different in different venues. I mean, we've been to like jazz clubs and like Improper City is a very different vibe than like the Cruise Room. Like very, very different things, and we've gotten different attendees based on that. So it's good to see those things permeate a little bit into the virtual atmosphere. I have some regulars who go a little crazy with the Zoom backgrounds. Last night, everybody was finding my meetup was actually last night. Everyone was finding their favorite photo of Casa Bonita or from visits to Casa Bonita. So like those small things play a big part in things.
I got to read this comment from Kathy Holmes. It says, the biggest missing link is follow-up. In other words, when you meet someone in person and you like them, you say, let's ride bikes this weekend or grab a drink in Lodo. Uh-oh, I lost it. And now to say, let's Zoom again, does not build a relationship the same way, which is so funny, whether it's business or romantic or just friends or anything in between. Yep. It's like, hey, this was really fun. Should we just continuously Zoom for the rest of our lives? Because that's all we've got.
Until we're allowed to leave. So on the flip side of that though, as panelists and you're speaking right now, normally we would be in front of all of these people in person. Do you all feel more comfortable sitting at home in your own space or wherever you are that you're by yourself? Do you think that changes your energy to be more open to this conversation with people who are listening? Or do you think that the cons of not being in person outweigh the pros of maybe being more open and comfortable?
It's a little weird because you can't see like the audience reacting to what you're saying and people nodding their head or not. You're like, am I totally off base for where people are and what they're thinking? Do people think I'm crazy? That part's a little weird. And just guiding the conversation in that way. It's hard to be responsive to the room. So.
Totally. When I'm teaching, I like to see the students because some of them are just totally blank learners. Well, they'll just stare at you and really they're just trying to compute. And some of them are like me who are like, yeah, totally. Every word you're saying is great. And I always look for that one because that's the only like guidance I have of if they even understand what I'm saying. So in a webinar situation, I look to you all to be like, can you even hear me? Like, am I speaking properly? So that's a really good point. Oh God, now I just miss people, you all. What about all of you else? Anybody else have an opinion on being comfortable versus being in person?
I see Jim Darling's comment, missing laughter, which is kind of this, the human exchange in person is so different. And part of it is the eye contact and the feedback that Michael brought up, but I got to co-host some of our events with RJ Owen. And for one, that just, we're literally bouncing information off each other or like exchanging a snarky comment or something as part of our shtick in a way. And I can look over at him and like kind of read him and he can see, it's totally different when we're on Zoom. We're still horsing around and having fun, but it's still different, So whether it's the hosting side of things or getting that read, it's just, so I almost take note of that on this end of things, if I'm hosting an event, to say, well, I don't know exactly what the right answer is. I'd almost want to know from the community, but what can I do to show up and still bring the energy and like, because it's still my duty or responsibility as a community host or builder to kind of afford that space. But again, we're winging it in a couple ways at least.
I really love what you said about that. And I would love to kind of steer the conversation in that direction of creating space. I think that's a really massive part of any type of community, and a safe space to feel heard and understood, a place to have any type of interaction. So when creating a space online and virtually, specifically for community, what do you think the top 3 most important things are? I'm sure we have a lot of people here who are looking maybe for some more specific tips on how to really execute some of these community things. So what would you say are the most important things when building that virtual community that they should focus on first? I'd love to hear from everyone. So maybe we start with Nick and kind of just go down the line.
Yeah, so I think for us, like creating this space for our community is, the thing I miss so much about the in-person is just hearing our community and being able to like get their feedback. So when we are doing events, like I stress feedback because that is so crucial for us in guiding how we move, how we make our next steps, what the next time we meet up looks like. So for me, it's gathering this feedback and like encouraging people to share it on either side, good, bad, ugly, whatever. Like we want the feedback so we can be better for our community.
Love that. Kelly,
Down the line's hard because we're all in different
Oh,
orders.
sorry. I assumed we were all in the same room. You're next on my screen if you want to go.
Am I? Yeah. We played a game of point to each other on one of the maps, and like we couldn't find like who was where. Yeah, it's been like finding that connection has been a real like struggle. A lot of it for us is just, like I said before, just showing up. Like it's the blur of like the lives we're leading right now is kind of hard, and marking time is part of it. Like some of the people in my community are like, man, I didn't realize a month went by already. Like we're already having another meetup. And it's nice to just, like you said too, with the Facebook group, like just check in with people. We have some people that I'm like, hey, we haven't talked in 3 months. Like, how's work? How's life? You alive? What are you doing to stay sane? What crazy things are people baking or activities have they taken up? Who's the sourdough king or queen? You know, all the crazy memes that are happening right now. But yeah, a big part of it is just, I'd relate it back to like friendship. Like just being there is like 50% of the battle. Letting people know you exist. I mean, even in this time, I think a lot more people are connecting with distant relatives or family. I have family back in the Midwest. I end up talking to them more over the last couple of months than I have in years previous, and friends and things as well. So it's a lot of just showing up.
And that said, there's something for everybody. This is revealing. If you didn't have community before, you now, I mean, it doesn't matter how eccentric your interests or passions are, there's someone else out there that you can connect with around the world and really easily, like within, minutes or hours. It's like, it kind of just opens up for anyone trying to, I think if I'm not mistaken, Nicole on the attendees list, if that's the same Nicole I know, is newer to Denver. It's like, just immersing yourself in all these different places is that much more accessible than it ever was before. Or at least it seems that way. It's kind of elevated. I don't know, a lot of good communities out there. Whatever your interest is, just be intentional about it. And people are connecting left and right still.
I think too, there's like this new opportunity for everyone to kind of be a community leader or be a community host. You don't need to wait for one of us to host an event for you. I think whether it's taking the people that you did meet at an event and asking them to connect after, or your family or your neighbors, but I think there's just this like new energy around the ability to reach out and show up. And the one thing, when you talk about what I think is most important, I'll refer back to a book that I'd recommend to anybody who leads any kind of community called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. It really talks about like the intention behind why you're bringing people together and starting with that. And then you can engineer the music or the slides or what you're going to say. But the other thing she talks a lot about is just how important the facilitator or the host really is, and how you need to take that role very seriously in the kind of questions you ask and the vulnerability you show in the rules. We started this call with some ground rules. In the ground rules, you have, make sure that someone doesn't dominate the whole conversation, be the host that says, that kind of politely cuts them off to hear from others, call on someone that maybe hasn't talked yet. So I love that book. And I think the curation of conversation is what we all can like really lean in most to when we're in this virtual setting to get that energy we're all looking for.
I love that you said that, and the curation of the conversation, I think, is such a big part of what we were saying about creating space. And Kathy just asked in the questions, in a virtual setting, some folks sometimes don't exhibit basic respect and kindness. Do you ever find that a challenge in your virtual meetups, and how do you work through it? And to your point, Kelly, I feel like it's exactly the moderators or the hosts' initial responsibility to kind of lead by example and show and explain what the expectations are there. And then once the expectations are clearly set, that's kind of when the no tolerance policy comes in. And I think we're all really experiencing that in life right now. Like, Michael, to your point, there's this hilarious meme that I always laugh about Childish Gambino. And it's like him in Community at the beginning. It's like, everybody at the beginning of quarantine, like so excited to be baking banana bread on YouTube. And then it's him in the This Is America video. And it's like, everyone at the end of quarantine's ready to destroy the government, like freaking out. And I think we've also kind of all evolved towards that at the end. It's like, okay, at the beginning of quarantine, we were all freaking out. None of us knew what was going to happen. And now we've kind of all evolved together. It's like, come on, we're past this now. Like, we're all really real with each other. We're having panels about community. Let's call each other on it in a respectful way. But I don't know, that's my take on it. Kelly, what do you think based on what you said in that question?
I agree. I think it's really important that the host makes everyone feel comfortable. And that may mean making the one person that's not being respectable feel uncomfortable. But that's just part of the way it goes. I mean, for the benefit of maybe calling that person out, you're really benefiting the whole experience. The whole energy is not being sucked out of the room. And so you gotta be willing to be brave, be a brave host and play the moderator role. In the book, she refers to like the Alamo Draft House, if you've ever been there, but they're like very direct about their rules when you sit down in those. Now I miss the movies as I say that, but they're like, don't get on your phone, don't talk, but to be direct about it and then follow through really just creates the experience for everybody. So whatever the appropriate ground rules are, and sometimes that might be just setting the ground rules that this is fun and laid back, and just bringing that energy forward sets a different tone too. So I think there's just such an important role that the host plays. It's not just a matter of making sure that the Zoom is working. It's really setting the tone for the community, whether that's your friends, your family, your church group, or your work team. I think that applies to every community.
I would love to, before we really open this up to more official audience questions, kind of just end on something that's maybe a little bit harder to talk about. It's definitely a sensitive subject, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I think especially with all of the social movements and election time coming up, we've been seeing a lot of really tense conversations that have been happening. And I believe that that's also a really big part of community. You kind of have to take the good with the bad and be prepared to support people through negative and positive experiences. And for me, I've been really disappointed to see a lot of this cancel culture stuff be thrown around, because creating a safe space for a healthy dialogue, whether you are debating or agreeing, is really paramount, I think, to bringing people together and understanding and being empathetic and creating a stronger community overall. And when you completely cancel somebody and don't give them the opportunity to learn or understand where they went wrong, or to respectfully educate them and maybe call them out, like you said, I believe that we're doing a disservice to the community, and just kind of nipping that in the bud takes away an opportunity to really strengthen it. Otherwise, obviously that's very circumstantial and there are certain things you have to take into account, but how are you all, at least let's keep this professional because I think there's too much to go into on a personal level, but maybe professionally, how are you all guiding and steering your communities through such an emotionally charged time, but through all of these really important conversations?
I feel like I want to like put Dave on the spot with his expertise in listening, because I think that is like such just a key component of community right now, is helping people understand how to listen. And Dave, that's your sweet spot. Do you have any?
Yeah.
I just totally
Well, I almost want to add one other thing to Kayte's list of things, which is like, if you go into an interaction and if you're even willing to change your own mind, meaning like expand your perspective, that if you're not adding that to it, I don't think anyone's going to get anywhere, by the way. But the act of listening, being the kind of listening intelligence, is this methodology that I work within in my coaching models, but it puts the duty, the responsibility, and the opportunity to just truly, with no agenda, learn about other people and come to understand the world through their eyes, which isn't the only thing we should be doing when we're meeting people, I suppose. But if that's at the forefront of your kind of commitment, then I think that integrity of the community, it doesn't mean that conflict doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that there isn't still, a fabric throughout that community of various perspectives, but it just lets the integrity of that community get really baked into each other when you're truly committed to understanding different perspectives. And that might be, I don't know, it's a very sentimental idea that is tough to hardwire in or put a process behind. But I think it is about, we're trying with Creative Mornings to essentially embody the values we've always had, which was everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. And then truly continue to champion that and create more places for people to have an exchange of ideas. And not to say we don't really have a perspective besides everyone's creative, everyone's welcome. And then that's what we're going to try to facilitate, is almost the exchange of that notion amongst different people, with our programming, our happy hours, our events, our field trips. But it takes almost like I don't know, right now it's a weird time. I feel like it is, everyone wants to be heard first before they're willing to listen to anyone else. And that means that no one's ever going to listen to anybody. So how do we shake that up as community leaders? It's like, maybe it's this great, the great listening project of 2021 that we all rally behind or something.
That sounds like a podcast.
Podcast. It's about, like, back to that empathy and just creating space to just be aware that it is a hard time for people. We're all kind of grieving for what should have been 2020 for us in a different way, and just a lot of things. And so Kin has started every Friday at 9:00 Zoom, where we have one of our women host, and it's just called Kin Cares, and there's no agenda. It's literally like, it could be 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, and it's really just to listen and to respond to whatever's on people's minds. And I think creating spaces like that too, where you're not talking at anybody, you're not trying to direct what the conversation should be, but you're just kind of open to what people are coming with, is important. And it's delicate, I get it, but making space for that is important.
Those are 2 really awesome perspectives. Thank you. If anybody else has something to add, please feel free. But in the meantime, please go ahead, audience, and start firing away some questions. And then we do have those breakout rooms that we can go off into to be a little bit more intimate and create that space we've been promoting this whole time. So feel free to start asking. Hannah's back in with us, and she'll give us details too about breakout rooms and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and so I saw some people were throwing in some questions and stuff in the chat during the event. So I'm going to share my screen. So we are going to go into some breakout rooms. Emily is going to share the breakout rooms in the chat. So feel free to grab those. I'm going to give you just like 2 minutes to just take that those links, throw them in like either a blank email or like in your notes section, so you can, if you want to, you can pop back and forth from either. These breakout rooms are exactly what we have been talking about, is a place to just come and chat with some of our panelists during this time. So we will head over to those in just a second. If anybody has any last minute questions, you can throw it in the Q&A now, or we can just head over to the breakout rooms. And if you can't make it to the breakout rooms, totally fine. We're so lucky to have you on this event. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening to do so. Panelists, you guys rocked it. This was so great to kind of confirm and hear all the things that I feel like about my events. Kate, thank you so much for moderating. Crushed it. So I am going to give it just a couple more seconds, and then we can kind of pop off here and go ahead into the breakout rooms.
And Hannah, to be clear, log off of this and go into the link,
yep.
Right?
Yep. So you're going to click your link. So you're going to be in breakout room 1, Dave. Emily is going to be hosting that one, and then I'll be hosting breakout room 2.
Perfect. See y'all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.